I'm going to fight for the heavyweight championship of the world. But that's not what happened to me. What happened to me is I started drinking Scotch.
A massive welcome to my next guest, and someone who I've admired for the dawn of time. Well, since my dawn of time, anyway. One of the best heavyweights I've ever seen. I was such an exciting fighter. Two-time world title challenger, Mr. Gerry Cooney. Gerry, how you doing? You okay, mate?
I'm great. It's great to be with you. Always great. I love my life today. It's been an up and down battle, but man, I tell you what, it's been a dream, and got a great family, a great life, and I've turned the page a couple of times, and I'm in the right lane.
Great to hear, and I love how honest that you are about your life, and I really can imagine it really inspires people, and I hope this will also inspire people here at Boxing TV.
Great.
So, what I'd like to do is really different than I think you would have maybe seen before. We'd like to really dig into, find out who the person is behind the gloves, and I know that you're a bit like me. I can tell already. You're a bit deep, and I like that. We're going to get on really, really well. But you had an amazing career. I mean, 28 wins out of 31 fights, some like 24 knockouts. You were an absolute banger. But that was the end. The beginning. Let's talk about really where this started for you. Kind of what got you into boxing.
I liken that story. I'm going to really go into that, but I want to just tell you that unfortunately for me, I needed another 10 fights I could never get because Don King owned everybody. And because I didn't sign with him, he didn't want me to get better. He did not want me to develop. So I was in there fighting, mostly all knockouts. I needed to get a bunch of more looks with different styles and talents, and I wasn't given that opportunity. And I really regretted that. I was embarrassed a lot of my life because people didn't get that. But, looking back on it now, I just read a great book by the name is called Damage. And it's a guy from over in England who wrote this book about the fighters and football players and different athletes who take those shots to the head. And so I was fortunate not to get stuck in that era. I saved my money. I got past that as a young kid. My brother left the home when he was 15 because my father was a raging alcoholic and just a crazy man, and abusive, neglectful, controlling. And my brother left at 15. I loved my brother. I didn't see him for a couple of years. When he was 18, he started going to a gym not too far from where I was from. And I followed him. And, we always had a heavy bag in the basement. My father, I guess, when he was a kid, he wanted to be a fighter, but he was in the Merchant Marines and he didn't get that opportunity. And so I always hit the bag. And I went to the gym and I watched him for a while. I hit the bag. And one day I asked if I could box with somebody. And they put me in there with this little Italian guy who'd been fighting for 5 or 6 years. And he kicked my ass. He beat me up a little bit, and I threw the gloves down and I came home. I said, forget it. But the next couple of days, I went back downstairs and I understood that the guy was going to come on me, and then I had a different outlook. And then a few days after that, I went back to the gym and I asked if I could box that kid again, and they let me box him again, except you could never do that to me again. And then 6 months later, at 16, 6'4", I don't know how many stones it is, but it was 160 pounds. And I went into the New York State Golden Gloves. And I made it to the finals that year, and I won the middleweight title. I had 7 fights, 5 knockouts, and it finally made me somebody. What I never felt at home. Herman Sporting Goods gave me a heavyweight bag. They announced me in school before and after, in the morning and the afternoon, and I was on the map. I was finally felt like somebody, and that's how I became a fighter.
That's so cool. I love that. I absolutely love that. So, as far as and you were a very good amateur, weren't you? But
yeah, I was a big puncher always.
Yeah, I mean, from the outside looking in, there's going to be many people out there just starting, out in the pros or the amateurs who watch the show. Where was this power coming from? Was it natural? Was it from how you were taught with technique, or was it just the fact you were a big guy? I mean, where is this power coming from?
You know, it's really funny, but when I was a kid, I was like 16. I saw my brother in a bar, and he backed into somebody, and the guy was about 6'9", called him outside, and my brother went outside, and I saw him hit the guy with a left hook on the chin and the right hand to the body, and the guy had the wind knocked out of him and was knocked cold, and it was one of the most terrifying things I'd ever seen. I had to grab my brother and get him out of there, and from that time on, obviously, I think professional athletes, we are just stronger than the average person, stronger than, I shouldn't say average person, stronger than people. I mean, I never thought I was a big puncher, but everybody I ever touched told me that I was such a big puncher. They thought I was kidding. But, and then I guess, I was boxing for 6 months. I won the middleweight championship with all those knockouts. But from my upbringing, I never really believed in myself. I was never taught self-esteem. I was never taught to believe. I was always afraid what was going to happen next. Where was I going to go? How was it going to be? And unfortunately, I look back on it. I wished I had somebody, because I really could have been something special.
Yeah, and that's one I will definitely dig into this a little bit later. Now, when reading up on your story, I do a lot of research before I speak to you, and I will say you have similar upbringing to me. I had a father who was a great man, and he's my stepfather, but I still call him Dad. And he was a gunner in the Navy, so he was really strict. And I hope he won't mind me saying it, but he didn't mind putting his hands on me when I was a kid, and it was tough. So when I saw that, I kind of saw that in me, and I think that does make you a tougher person. I do. I don't know what it is. It just does. But you had a similar kind of thing, probably even more so than me, where you had. And I mean this in the greatest of respect, and I want this for kids out there who may be in a similar kind of position, think, there is a life after, and I know you thought a lot of your dad, but tell us a little bit about the stuff you had to go through, because I know he was very strict, wasn't he, when you were a kid?
Well, yeah, I mean, we never went out on the weekends to play with our friends. They'd pass by our house all the time. We were always in the garden or painting or doing the plumbing or just my father had built a ring in the backyard when mostly everybody was gone. And my mother used to keep time, and we'd box. And, I could have kicked his ass, really, at 17, but I couldn't hit him. And, but he had no trouble trying to hit me. And I ran out from underneath that rope many a time. And then I regretted not slapping him and letting him know listen. Yeah. You can't do that to me no more. But I did run into somebody who did have that experience and did knock his father out, and he regretted that all his life. Yeah. So it happened the way it is. It was hard. We had to get shaved, our hair cut off all the time. We had to rub his feet every night. He was angry. We didn't know who was coming home every night. And it was scary because you had to figure out how to fit in somehow into this situation, whatever it was, whether he was happy, angry, sad, there was always going to be a beating involved with it somewhere.
Do you feel that was mainly from, the drink, from your
back? I think it was mainly that's how he was brought up. And unfortunately, he didn't get help for it. And so he never changed. And so how can you grow up in a household where you're beat all the time and then have 6 children and beat them all the time? I mean, it's really hard to fathom. I mean, I have 3 great kids. I've never put my hands on them. As a matter of fact, 99% of the world is putting them down. It's my job to pick them up.
Yeah.
And I got great kids today. I mean, my daughter is 20. She can fight. She knows how to fight. My son is 23. He can fight. And I have a 30-year-old, and listen, they're all, I let them pursue whatever they wanted to do, but I taught them all how to take care of themselves. Listen, I love everybody. I mean, I'm a people person. I travel. I still get to play Gerry Cooney quite often in appearances and golf tournaments and charity events. And so, yeah, I like to turn people on. I want them to feel comfortable. I want them to feel good about themselves. I have people that call me and tell me how much I talk to them, and they tell me how much their father, their uncle really love me. I said, well, give them a call. And I get on the phone with them. Awesome. Those are gifts that we're given as being a celebrity or a professional athlete that most people don't get a chance to do. And I get a chance to do it a lot.
Yeah.
And you were talking a little bit before about my upbringing. So I'm 12, and I have a bottle of Boone's Farm apple wine. That's how old I am. And I drink it down, and I'm at this party. I'm sick as anything. I'm crawling around, listening to people say, look at that kid. And all I'm thinking to myself is, I'm never going to do this again. And somehow I get home, and I go to sleep, and I wake up the next day. I forgot about that part when I was sick. I remember when that big hole I've been carrying around in my chest, the alcohol numbed it up. I felt attractive. I fit in. I was funny. I could talk to the girls. And that was the biggest regret that I had, because that was became my friend that night, because it numbed me up. It made me feel whole, not broken, and not lost, and not afraid. And unfortunately, that followed me. And in the biggest fight of my life, in 1981, I knocked out Ken Norton in 54 seconds of the first round. You'd think I would say, well, I better get a good trainer. I got to get a good nutritionist. I got to get someone to help me run. I'm going to fight for the heavyweight championship of the world. But that's not what happened to me. What happened to me is I started drinking Scotch, and I started messing around with some recreational drugs.
Right.
And that's what happened to me. And, I talked to Holmes about a year ago. He said, Gerry, I never drank, never smoked, never took a drug in my whole career. And boy, had I wished I could have done that. Had someone to grab me by the arm and say, hey, Cooney, come on, let's pay attention. This is really important.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like there's, from what you said already, kind of, and again, we will get onto it, but I feel like there is quite a lot of almost, not regret, but almost kind of an element of you could have done better. I mean, obviously, you said from the start with you, kind of, the booze, and that was a big, burden on your career. Do you feel really, from honestly to man to man, do you feel that you'd been a much better fighter, if someone guided you in the right way?
Listen, if I check the air in the tires, and I change the oil, and I make sure the radiator is clean, my car's going to run a lot better, right?
Uh-huh.
And unfortunately, that wasn't the case with me. But I thought I could handle it. I thought I was going to be okay. And really, I think what was happening was, in some ways, if I didn't make it, if I didn't beat Holmes, I would have an excuse that I was drinking.
One thing I want to talk to you about really is no, loads more. Yeah, don't you worry about that. But for me, is you were seen as, basically, you turned pro, and you were seen as basically the great white hope. It was around about the time of the Rocky times, and you. How did that feel, really, being, because back then it was different, it was, and we can pretend racial situations weren't real, but they were, and they still are, really to this day. But back then, how did that make you feel? People calling you the Great White Hope.
Can I, that's a great story, but I want to just tell you this. I just recently had to make an appearance in Atlanta. And I'm telling you, it was the first place in time in my life I went to Atlanta. There's no race there. Everybody cares about and is positive and happy for everybody else, no matter what color you are. Listen, I came out, obviously, the cover of Time Life magazine with Sylvester Stallone. He was standing on a milk crate about a foot in front of me so he could appear somewhat my size. And I was in a big fight. And, obviously there were those people who wanted to promote to make more money. And unfortunately, racism is one of those things that promotes and makes more money. But, for me, I was in a camp with 5 or 6 kids I grew up with. We always hung out with. And we were living the dream. I was eating turtle soup and lobster tail. I was in Las Vegas going to shows and running on the beach. And I'm not on the beach, on the desert, and training out there. I was fulfilling a dream to try and become heavyweight champion of the world. So I didn't really get caught up in I didn't see it. There was a lot of it going on. I thought Holmes was doing it. Holmes thought I was doing it. And I really did not like that man. And I couldn't wait to get in the ring. I wanted to hit him with a left hook on the chin. I never had done that before, going into a fight. And so as far as he and I are concerned, there is no racism. Don King's and I don't know who else might be. I don't know. My promoters, I don't know. But we didn't have any of that. Larry and I are best friends today. 40 years later, we get together, we make appearances. I go down to see him. He supports me, and we're friends. We're like two brothers.
He's a lovely guy.
So,
We had
you
him on
know,
the
I
show a
mean,
couple of weeks ago, and some of the things he was saying, it was just incredible. He's a lovely man. Now, for me, one of the biggest highlights of your career, when you mentioned earlier on, is when you fought Ken Norton, a legend in his own right. And I read something a little bit earlier. Now, I want you to educate me, and I want you to
yeah,
educate the audience. Now, I was seeing things about 4 punches from death and things like that.
yeah.
What's that about? What was this 4 punches from death about?
Well, obviously, you know, I'm fighting Kenny Norton. I didn't realize it at the time, but if he comes forward, he's a killer. But if you back him up, he can't get off.
Uh-huh.
And so I was aggressive. I wanted him to feel my power. And so I took it to him and I hit him with the right hand to the body. And I saw him buckle a little bit and I felt pretty good. And I said, let me take a shot at this. Let me take a shot right now. And I spun him into the corner, and it took me a few seconds to catch up with his bobbing and weaving. And I hit him with a right uppercut and knocked him out. And the referee didn't stop the fight. He didn't know that Norton was stuck on the rope. And so, you know, every paper the next day on the front page, it seemed like it said 4 punches from death. And believe me, it was. And they could have stopped that fight at 40 seconds. But when I'm fighting in the moment, I don't stop. You're trained never to stop punching. And so I kept punching. Every time I came around to my right, I looked at the referee. He wasn't doing anything, and it felt pretty good. So I came back again.
Yeah.
And anyway, you know, it was a great fight for me. You know, I figured I'm going to have my hands full. This guy was a beast, but I didn't know if you back up Kenny Norton, like Deontay Wilder, if you back him up, he can't get off. And that was my experience. And it benefited for me that day. And I took advantage of it and I got the knockout. And I wished at that time, that was the night my career really ended, because that was the night you think I would have said, well, let me get a good trainer.
Yeah.
Let me get in shape. Let me get ready. I started drinking and partying with some recreational drugs. And the biggest regret of my life.
And you then went on to fight Larry Holmes, who you know is arguably, for me, top 3
one of the
heavyweights
best
of all
guys.
time.
One of the best guys. Right.
Honestly, he's. I was only speaking about him last night. Great guy, lovely, lovely bloke. And he, you know, you fought so well in that fight. I mean, from your end, from the fighter himself, talk us, kind of through the fight from your end.
Listen, Dan, I want to just tell you this, right? So my experience from fighting Larry Holmes, if we had a rematch, I learned so much in that first fight. I grew up so much in that fight. I understood, like you can't imagine, so much more than when I was in that fight. Listen, he was patient. He was smart. He waited. He used that jab. He set me up. He made me get tired, made me feel confident, and then, banged at me, and it was 115 degrees that night. Oof. It was hot out. And I wasn't really taking care of myself like I should have been. And so I got tired. And, I had a great 10th round. I had a great lot of rounds. We fought back and forth all night long. I just wished I had some more experience fighting guys that were top guys back then, when I could have gained from those different looks. I could have learned a lot more about, adjustments and, how to fight this guy and how to watch out for this and that. I didn't get that. I was blowing these guys out. And I really blame it to Don King for not giving me that experience that I needed.
One question I've got to ask you. So you were a huge puncher. That left hook especially is a thing of beauty. But you fought some massive punches yourself. Foreman and Norton and Lyle, and to name just a few. And I always like asking this question, but who from who you fought was the biggest puncher you faced?
My wife. My wife, for sure. It had to be Foreman. I really hadn't fought in a while. I was promoting some of his fights, and he came to me and asked me one day, I got finally put down the booze. I was sober for about a year or 8 months, and he came to me and said, "Why don't we fight?" And I thought, well, I never did it clean. was making some good money. I figured, let me take a shot. And I went out and I hit him. I hurt him. If you look at David Letterman with George Foreman on David Letterman asked him, who's the hardest punch that ever hit you? Foreman said Cooney, Ron Lyle, and somebody else. And I got caught by him, and I hit him with a great uppercut to the body, and I caught him with a good hook. Uh-huh. And then, obviously I hadn't fought in a long time. Clancy wanted me to move around for 7, 8 rounds. Don't get in a slug fight with him. Tire him out. But when you hurt somebody and you're a fighter, you're going to go after him. And I got caught with an uppercut. And listen, and it helped me to turn the page of my life and get on with it. Yeah. He's a tremendous puncher, a great champion. He's a great man. And I'm glad I had that experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously moving on to the modern day then, the Joshuas and the Furies and the Wilder, like you mentioned a little bit earlier, how do you feel they would have done in your era with the Lyles and the Foremans and the Holmes and the Cooneys? How do you feel they'd have done?
Dan, I want to tell you that in our day, it wasn't like maybe I'm going to get to the body this round. Maybe I'll get to the body next round. I got to get to the body. I'm not going to stay outside and try and outbox you, those big dudes. I'm going to get inside and I'm going to mess up those ribs. I'm going to bang the solar plexus. I'm going to break a couple of ribs so I can get those hands to come down from the inside where they can't get to me. And then lower the boom while I'm inside and then start over again. And, obviously we make adjustments and you got to pay attention, but, it's a lost art. I think the amateurs kind of took away body punching and we're starting to see it come back again more. But listen, when I fought, I was coming to the body. I was going to be in your body. And, obviously, we wear, everybody wears down. You're only good for so many, fights, only for so many, a period of time. And, if you're not taking care of yourself, those shock absorbers wear out faster. And so, listen, my point is to tell kids, you want to fight? You go to the gym and you find the guy who's teaching defense first.
Yeah.
Go to the guy who's going to teach you how to protect yourself. You're always going to be able to punch and keep your hands up and keep stepping to the right. Get your head out of the picture. Roll inside, punch it a little bit, hold on, or get back out again and use that jab. Get your head out of the way. And, it's a lost art.
So many people out there who couldn't wait to hear your story and learn a little bit more about the legend himself. So what have you got to say to your fans out there?
Listen, I love you guys. This is a great game we're in. Don't give up on it. I tell people on your computer, put Boxing Scene or Max Boxing on your front page and follow the stories.
Honestly, Gerry, I just want to say really from my end a massive thank you.
Thank you. I had a great time.
Yeah, and I knew you'd be a great guest. And I can't wait to bring you over to the UK and have you sitting next to me on commentary. We'll have a really good time. But thanks so much for coming on the show, mate.
Dan, look forward to it, and thank you to all the fans out there. I love you guys. Keep punching, baby. Keep punching.